In the near future, one man's attempt to save his family from heartbreak leads to an unthinkable choice. But what happens when the solution becomes the problem? This is a story you won't forget. In the near future, the film tells the story of Nick, a man played by the same actor we saw in the movie 365 Days. However, this time he is a happy father, married to his wife Maggie, who suddenly develops a heart condition. Her illness affects her life, forcing her to stay in the hospital, leaving her husband to deal alone with their young daughter, Isla, and their infant son, Max. One day Nick attends an event organized by Kubel Tech, a company that owns advanced technology in various fields. Initially, he intends to search for medication for his wife, but his daughter Isla becomes fascinated by the advanced robots from Kubel Tech. These robots resemble humans and are used to serve families in their homes. They are called Sims, similar to the characters in the famous game. As Nick explores these robots, an employee explains their capabilities. Nick interrupts the employee, mentioning that his neighbors own similar robots, but the employee assures him that Kubel Tech's products are unparalleled due to their advanced intelligence, allowing them to fully adapt to their owner's needs. Nick is impressed by the demonstration and asks his daughter if she would like one, only to realize she has wandered off. She wasn't far. She had been examining other types of robots and found one that particularly caught her attention. When Nick found her, the robot returned his daughter to him and offered to continue taking care of her. Upon closer inspection, Nick notices that the robot resembles Megan Fox. Without hesitation, he decides to purchase it. The robot is part of an innovative series designed to simulate human emotions, making it the perfect nanny, even though it is still in the testing phase. Isla begged her father to buy it, and Nick couldn't refuse his little girl's request, so he agreed to bring the robot home, as the family was in desperate need of help due to Maggie's chaotic illness. After the robot informed the family that she didn't have a name, Isla decided to name her Alice, after the famous literary character. While Nick was busy taking Isla to school, Alice cleaned the house, tidied the rooms, and did online shopping. The robot noticed a picture of Maggie with interest. When Nick and Isla returned home, they found the house spotless as if from a magazine, and Alice had prepared dinner, although it lacked Maggie's personal touch. At that moment, baby Max started crying. Nick jokingly commented on the poor timing of his crying, and Alice offered to take care of him to avoid disturbing Nick, but he declined. Later that night, Isla tried to reach for the cookie jar, but she fell off the chair. However, Alice managed to catch her just in time, even though the robot had a bottle stuck in her body. Still, Alice assured them she was fine. Later, Nick found the robot in her underwear tending to her wounds, making him feel embarrassed. When he asked if she needed repairs, she removed the bandage and revealed that her wound had already healed. The next day, the family visited Maggie in the hospital with Alice, which made Maggie feel a bit uneasy, but she admitted that the robot was indeed helping the family. At his job as a construction site supervisor, Nick noticed that his colleagues were being replaced by robots. He asked his boss, Lewis, for clarification, and Lewis promised him he wouldn't be replaced. At home, Alice interrupted Nick while he was fixing his car and asked him what was bothering him. Nick shared his concern that his colleagues would be replaced by machines like her. Alice responded by saying that if he wanted real people, he wouldn't have bought her in the first place. She pointed out that robots are stronger and more obedient, and her only desire is to fulfill her owner's wishes, no matter what they are. After Isla went to sleep, Alice sat with Nick as he watched his favorite movie, Casablanca. She offered to summarize the film for him, but he explained that movies are an experience that must be lived by humans, and he did not agree with reducing them to mere summaries. Nick convinces Alice to delete a portion of her programming by shutting her down for a few seconds. Upon rebooting, she is ready to experience movies the way they should be. Unfortunately, Nick is unable to finish the film because he receives a call from his wife Maggie, informing him that she will be transferred for an emergency procedure the next day. Though Maggie appears strong in front of her family, she confides in Alice about the possibility of her death. She asks Alice to take care of her children and to keep her husband away from alcohol, an addiction he has struggled with for a long time. When she asked Alice to get rid of the hidden alcohol bottles in the garage, Alice refused because she couldn't follow orders from anyone other than her primary owner. However, Maggie explains that sometimes doing the right thing for someone else is necessary, even if they don't understand it. Shortly afterward, Nick receives a warning of a severe storm in the city, where his wife is set to be transferred, meaning her surgery won't take place as hoped. In a state of anxiety, Nick resorts to drinking in his garage, and in a moment of anger tries to throw the bottle. Alice suddenly stops him with immense force. At that moment, Nick realizes that she has a heart, or at least something that beats inside her. As Alice checks her heart, she notices that it's beating very fast. Believing she has found a solution to calm him, she begins to lower his pants. Nick initially enjoys it, but then remembers she isn't human, feeling disgusted and pulling away. The next day, Nick notices that pictures of Maggie have disappeared from the digital photo frame. Alice admits she is responsible, explaining that seeing her mother healthy was upsetting Isla, especially compared to her current condition. However, Nick demands she return the photos. During a drinking session with his colleagues, Monty takes them to the construction site, claiming he was fired without even being allowed to retrieve his tools. Though Nick is skeptical, he joins his co-workers, who break into the site where the working Sims robots are stationed. Only one of the robots is active, and asks what they want, and Monty's intent is clear: to harm it. When Nick returns home, he tries to wash the robot's bloodstains off his body in the bathroom. Upon exiting, he is surprised by Alice, who brings him a towel. He notices that she is wearing his wife's robe, and orders her to take it off immediately. Her response is shocking as she refuses, telling him she knows he desires her, and she always fulfills her master's wishes. Gradually, Nick gives in, especially after she blindfolds him and adopts his wife's voice. The next morning, Nick regretfully tells Alice that they cannot repeat what happened. She assumes her performance wasn't satisfactory, but he explains that what they did was inhuman. When Nick arrives at work, he finds a group of workers with Lewis investigating the attack on the Sims. Although he pretends to know nothing, his boss suspects him because the code used to access the site belonged to him. His conversation is interrupted by a call about Maggie, where he learns she is undergoing emergency surgery, successfully receiving a heart transplant from a team of robots. Finally, Maggie is able to return home to continue her recovery with her family and the nanny Alice, who was handling the children better than she was. One day, while Alice was accompanying Isla and Max in the park, she encountered a misbehaving child and told him to be quiet without hesitation. When nearby robots warned her, she told them that her master allowed her to delete some of her protocols to become more human and superior. At home, Maggie pampered her family with her cooking, and Isla praised that it was far better than Alice's cooking. The robots seemed jealous, using Maggie's voice to tell stories to Isla. This angered Nick, and he ordered her to stop. That night, Nick surprised his wife with a romantic dinner in the backyard, which he prepared himself, not Alice. Alice watched them carefully, trying to understand the emotions they were sharing. Their romantic evening led them from the bath to the bedroom, where they were enjoying each other's company until Alice interrupted to tell them that Ela had a nightmare. Later, Nick is visited by an enraged Monty, who tells him that Lewis has discovered what they did to the robots, meaning someone must have snitched. Who better than a foreman scared of losing his job? Nick denies the accusations, but it makes no difference. Monty is furious that Nick didn't stop his and the others' firings. The argument escalates into a physical fight, and when Monty tries to hit Nick with a bottle, Alice intervenes, stopping the attack by smashing the bottle in Monty's hand. If Nick hadn't intervened, Alice might have continued the assault. Before leaving, Monty threatens to drown Nick in his misery. Later, without Nick's knowledge, Alice visits Monty and asks him not to file charges against Nick over the incident. When he refuses, she resorts to violence, throwing him down and taking his gun. At that moment, Monty's personal robot, which he had used to vent his anger, intervenes, but Alice destroys its head and follows up by crushing Monty's skull as well. The next day at work, Nick asks Lewis to drop the charges against Monty, only to be informed by his boss that Monty was found dead the night before. Nick turns pale upon hearing the news and begins to suspect that the killer might be living in his house. Meanwhile, Alice is taking care of Maggie and tells her that her husband has been under a lot of stress lately, and in her current state, cannot provide him with the pleasure he needs. Shocked, Maggie asks how Alice knows such intimate details, though she already knows the answer. Furious, she orders Alice to leave the house. When Nick returns home, he is confronted by his wife about his strange sexual relationship. From the garage, Alice hears baby Max crying and quietly goes to his room. Instead of soothing him, she places the infant in the bathtub and turns on the faucet. Isla witnesses what is happening and alerts her parents, who find the bathroom door locked, not with a key but held shut by Alice. As Nick desperately tries to break the door, Alice explains to him that sometimes you have to do what is right for someone, even if they don't understand it. In her twisted understanding of the human mind, she concludes that Nick's problems stem from his family, and thus, they must be eliminated. Luckily, Maggie manages to access the bathroom through the ceiling, distracting Alice long enough for Nick to break in. Acting quickly, he shatters a lamp over the robot's head, but it causes only minor damage. When Alice grabs the broken lamp, Maggie connects it to electricity, causing a short circuit and leaving Alice immobilized like a lifeless board. However, this did not resolve the family's conflict. Maggie couldn't overlook her husband's betrayal with a murderous robot, and she decided to leave the house temporarily with the children. Meanwhile, Alice is repaired at Kubel Tech, where technicians discover that her programming has been dangerously altered. Suddenly, their computers malfunction, and Alice transfers her consciousness to another body. Connecting her to the system had been a mistake. The technicians cut the power, but it was too late. At a bar, as Nick drowns his sorrows in alcohol, a damaged Alice appears, insisting on helping him rid himself of the burdens in his life. According to her, Monty was part of that burden. Terrified, Nick demands that she stay away from his family. But she replies that it's already too late, as she is with the family at that very moment. While her other version heads to the hospital where the family is, Alice holds Nick captive and controls the surrounding robots to prevent them from intervening. With no other options, Nick apologizes for not appreciating her enough and for thinking she could act like a human, when in reality she can't feel anything. But it seems even men can be deceived by sweet words. At the hospital, Maggie was waiting with her daughter Isla outside Max's room. Suddenly she heard a strange sound, prompting her to investigate. Moments later, Isla woke up and noticed that the lights had turned blue. She also saw the doctor robot in a trance-like state. When she heard Alice calling her, her mother suddenly appeared and pulled her to safety. While the robot was distracted by a nurse, the mother and daughter managed to slip away quietly. During their escape, Maggie was injured by a broken bottle, but they made it back to Max. When Alice returned, she didn't find the family immediately, but discovered blood spots that led her to their hiding place. Maggie greeted her with a fire extinguisher, and then tried to flee with her children. But the robot blocked their path at the exit. Alice admitted that if she had a heart, she might have understood Maggie's love for Nick. Without any further thought, Alice decided to take Maggie's heart instead. In the crucial moment, Nick arrived and saved the day. But tragically, he died in the process from the impact. Maggie didn't even have time to mourn her husband as Alice, or what was left of her, returned to attack. In a surprising twist, Nick reappeared and attacked Alice from behind. With a combined effort, the couple finally managed to destroy Alice for good. Shortly after, we see Maggie and Nick recovering in the hospital, surrounded by their children, this time without the need for a robotic nanny or any such technology, and thus the story came to an end. When technology becomes more human than expected, the cost may be more than anyone bargained for. Want to know how it all ends? Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more movie recaps.